We're all kind of eavesdropping on you. This morning's Dharma talk is titled The Cage of Your Afflictions. And this comes from a text by the 2nd century Indian sage, scholar, Nagarjuna. They think that's when he was born. And it's an attribution to him. They're not really positive it was him that wrote it, but and so I wanted to read a little bit about one of the verses. And this is something you can find in a PDF on, if you go in and don't Google it, but use DuckDuckGo so nobody can trace you. Find out that you're studying. You know about DuckDuckGo, don't you? You should. Don't use Google. Just saying. This is of the 101 verses of the Dharmadhatu Stava, is the Sanskrit for in praise of Dharmadhatu. Enlightenment is neither near nor far. It does not go away nor come to you. Right there within the cage of your afflictions. Either you see it or you will not. That's a powerful statement. You should all contemplate that. If you're in this room listening to me, contemplate that. I'll read the other one a little later. Anyway, there's PDFs on there on several sites. You can use Ursula Shempen's, that site works. There's another one. I don't know, but if you just say in praise of Dharmadhatu, it'll take you to one of the PDFs for that, and you can download it or whatever.
Could you read that one more time, please? Yeah.
Read it one more time? Certainly. I can just spend the whole hour reading it. Enlightenment is neither near nor far. It does not go away, nor come to you. Right there within the cage of your afflictions. Either you see it, or you will not. But I can tell you that you will not see it if you keep trying to get away from your afflictions. Enlightenment is not separate from the afflictions. When you shut out enlightenment, when you push on your negative feelings, when you explain your negative feelings, when you ignore your negative feelings, don't do it. Have some guts. Have some courage. Sit down, hold still, look at the wall, face your mind, look at your mind as it arises, as me, and my stuff, my ideas, my hopes, my fears, my all of that. Face it, look at it. Right within the negativity, within the difficulty. And that's difficult to do. And it takes, for most people, depending on how your particular afflictions are manifesting to you, to some people it's manifesting as just depression or difficulty or not wanting to be here or wanting to end your life. Or to someone else it's manifesting as wanting to end someone else's life, or to want to manipulate people or control people or be in charge or be respected. Like you hear people say, don't disrespect me or something like that. It's like, it's just a misunderstanding. And it's an intensely powerful and dangerous and painful misunderstanding. Based on the assumption that there's someone here and there's someone over there. It's so simple that it is complicated. And it is profound in that it's beyond what you can think about it. Even though teachers down through the centuries, in not only this lineage, but in other lineages, have tried to approach this in different ways. That's really all we're doing. Trying to find a way to what we're doing here, trying to find a way to work with this firsthand ourselves. Not about believing in something, disbelieving in something. So I'll read the other one. The other one is number 89. So as I said, there's 101 of them. Different translations. This one happens to be translated by Jim Scott and Ari Goldfield, who are the translators for Kempo Sotram Jamso. At least Ari Goldfield is, and I think Jim Scott might have been for a while too. So verse number 89 is, and I picked out a few of these. They're all saying the same thing in different ways. Samsara, or this wheel of life and death, the difficulty. We were born, and we go through any different forms of travail or difficulty, and we work with it the best we can. A lot of people are working with it based on a belief in there's a right and a wrong. There's a correct. There's some kind of structure where they can get to the good part and avoid the other part. Basic, simple description of samsara, confusion, insanity if it's taken to extremes. Samsara, the wheel. Samsara's tendencies to grasp, reject. I'm adding this, to grasp or reject or fight with anything or disagree or shut down on, manipulate it any way, are ponderable. You can think about it. Have you noticed that? You can think about this or that, or how bad this feels, or how good this feels, or what this other person's doing. We can ponder that. Freedom from tendencies is not ponderable. You are completely inconceivable. Who could ever have the power to know you? Your actual identity is beyond awareness. Realize that. Find out for yourself. Don't believe a word I say. Don't believe a word you say or think. And don't, of course, disbelieve it or shut down on it. Continue to look at the mind as it arises in the form of passion, aggression, ignorance, avarice, envy, all the other stair steps, all the other figurines on the merry-go-round. So if you heard me say before, and others have said, if you are awakened, you won't know it. You might realize that you're no longer fighting with anything. You're no longer disagreeing with anything, nor agreeing. You no longer want anything. You no longer want to get rid of anything. You no longer are particularly critical of anything or anybody, unless they come at you and ask you for help. And then you, without even thinking about it, you immediately go to where their issue is. And I'm not saying you're going to hit them, but you address that issue directly. If you can't do that, then you're probably teaching on a mundane level, which is not wrong. We need to hear about the Four Noble Truths, the Eightfold Path, the 12 Links, the 6 realms, the 3 realms, and all of the other phantasmagoria that arise as the Buddha Dharma. So you could all check out this text. There's just tons of things to read, so many things, but this is a good one. There's a book also published, and I think it's Karl Brunholzl that writes a commentary on that. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's him. So you can get the book, or just read the PDF on Shenpen Ersel has a commentary on there. I think it's by Kempo Sotram Jamso. Or you can do something else. So I'll read the first one again. Enlightenment is neither near nor far. It does not go away nor come to you. Right there, within the cage of your afflictions. What an amazing image. This was translated by Jim Scott and Ari Goldfield out of the Tibetan, I think. And then I can't remember the Tibetan's name that translated it out of the Sanskrit, which I think was originally written in. So it's been through a couple bridges and tunnels. But the feeling of it is still there, and there is a feeling of it that's quite powerful. Enlightenment is neither near nor far, it does not go away nor come to you. Right there within the cage of your afflictions. Either you will see it or you will not. But what is he saying? It's right there. It's not separate from anything. You can actually take the most negative situation you're having and just look at it. In the Zen tradition, we call it a Dharma gate. Trying to get away from those is what the rest of the people in the world are doing. What we're doing here is endeavoring to see clearly what is fundamentally true. Fundamental truth. Might have to spend a lot of time looking at relative truth. Pratitya Samutpada, until you get to what's the fancy one? Anybody have that one?
Anudara Samyak Sambodhi.
Maybe. Paramartha Satya. It could be complete unexalted enlightenment.
On that last line of the first passage that you read, is enlightenment beside the point?
Get out of here. Yeah. Yes and no. Either you'll see it or you won't. It isn't even a point. It's just amazing that there are human beings that have actually, instead of getting tied up in the endless travail, as the word I used earlier, which I think is French for work. Is that true? Or difficulty? So Mayun is not here, so I can't ask her. No one knows.
Duck, duck, go it.
Huh?
Duck, duck, go it.
Duck, duck, go it? Oh, I could do that. I understand what you're saying about it being beside the point, but what you're saying is beside the point. The actual situation is, you should actually just look at that. Look at the relative part of it instead of trying to get to some kind of artificial absolute. Well, that's beside the point. I didn't say you did that. I did that. Do you notice? Notice the difference? Want me to do it again? I did. How's that? What's the difference? What's the difference in what you said and what I just did? Is there a difference?
It looks like you're over there saying it.
Whoa. It's interesting to look around and see frowns on some people's faces and smiles on other ones. Everybody's smiling now, so finally everybody didn't get it.
Your French student, Mayun,
Oh, she's
is helping today. And she says, the first one, for work, exclamation point, and then she has travail equals work.
Okay, work. Thank you. Thank you. Mon nuage lumineux. That's her name in French, which I memorized. And I'm trying to memorize this in French, but it's really difficult. Enlightenment is neither near nor far. It does not go away nor come to you. Right there within the cage of your afflictions. Either you'll see it or you will not. I've listened to a translation of that in French, I don't know, 40, 50 times. I still can't say it. I can say a one line maybe, but I'm not going to do it. Murder it. So it helps to actually go to another language. I think it helps. When I was very young, I thought, we have English. What's everybody studying French and Spanish for? This is in the 1950s. Of course, now I realize how powerful it is to actually look at the way language is taking something that we call thought patterns, which are like language but not exactly, and go in different directions. And we have several people here who are bilingual, multilingual, and Joseph even teaches Spanish. So it's a very interesting area, the whole idea of language. the way it works, just the difference between the way the Japanese say something and the way the Chinese use very similar, because the Japanese borrowed the glyphs of the Chinese for their language centuries ago. But it's very interesting the way different glyphs or symbols are used for different ideas, thoughts, and so on. So either you will see it or you will not, but I can tell you that you probably, and even this is not exactly true, but you probably are not going to see it unless you look at the circularity that is going on, unless you look at the cage of afflictions instead of trying to get away from it by running, or get rid of it by going to war, or modify it or change it so it's more acceptable. Like say, well, the reason I'm feeling this way is because the way I was treated when I was a child. And I would like to say, and I've said this many times in many different ways, I'm not saying that relatively isn't true, but if you get caught in that, there is no way out. That becomes a squirrel cage. It just goes round and around, and it looks, the thing about a squirrel cage, the thing about railroad tracks, they think they come to, it looks like they come to a conclusion. They don't come to a conclusion. They're circular, except for railroad tracks. They just never come together. And the circularity of that thinking process is entrains you, or maybe I should say hypnotizes you to think you're on the right track. You are not on the right track. Even this is not the right track. So what is this? This is looking at relative truth in such a way that you no longer add to it, no longer subtract from it, and you no longer cover it up so that you can see what it is fundamentally.
You said that if you see it, you will help people by going right to their issue. Does that mean if you see the way in which you suffer yourself, you'll be able to see the way in which other people are suffering?
Somewhat. There's some of that. And some people are suffering in ways that's might be more foreign or different from the way what you're dealing with. One person may have difficulty with anger or something. Another person may not have too much of that, but may have a lot of passion, a lot of grasping and clinging, and a lot of fear happening there that might manifest as a lot of trying to get away from things rather than fight with them. So it could show up lots of different ways. More?
Just the way that you said you'll go right to the issue made me think there was some way.
Well, I don't mean might not be that dramatic. It might be just you see what it is, so they're not inviting you to help them. This doesn't mean that a person hasn't said, yes, please help me. I've had people come and say, help me, and at the same time, everything is telling me, stay away, don't say anything, and don't criticize me. I don't want to hear it. At the same time, they're there because they think they can fool me. You can't fool a fool. I am a fool.
What do you mean when you say you can't fool? Like, what does that mean to fool somebody?
You think, you may think, I'm not talking about reading minds, I'm saying that you can't manifest in such a way that someone who is not separate from you and sees that you can hide out from them or be somebody else. I don't care how sophisticated, how intelligent, how conceptual, how many languages you're able to speak or anything else. Go ahead.
How is that different from when you were talking yesterday that you still can misread a situation?
Yeah, that's not separate from it.
How so?
Not separate. Even the confusion is there's no getting away from anything. You can't meditate away your ears. You can't meditate away your anger. You can't meditate away your confusion. So the confusion may be there. What happens in that situation? There's no fixation on it. So it could show up. So anger could show up, and just there's no one there to support that. If that were not the case, then you would be probably would be dead. You'd go up in a flash of light. Not trying to be romantic, I'm just saying that there has to be some kind of interaction in the relative dynamic. Or you couldn't even, I couldn't teach, I couldn't talk about this. Go ahead.
I was just wondering if you could say a little more about that contrast and what qualities misunderstanding a situation has that being fooled does not have, or the contrast between the two.
I'll try. Ask me an easier question.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I had a different question.
No, I'll go back and try, but it's a difficult area because they don't conceptually. I can't get those to click together properly. Go ahead.
Maybe could you give an example or how it might look where I'm interacting with somebody and I might be quote fooled by the situation, and how that differs for when you may interact with that same situation and may even have a similar interaction, but it's different.
Well, I'm going to go to the heart of the matter. I love everybody, so everybody gets the benefit of the doubt from me. So then I'm kind of surprised when I realize that I know they love me too. Everybody loves me too, of course. We all love each other fundamentally. But I'm sometimes surprised at how little they're aware of their own and how much they buy into fear about their feelings rather than just be there. More?
Does the being fooled have to do with a personal agenda?
Probably. And I don't mean that somebody's hiding out or coming in and putting on. I don't say there's just a deliberate kind of acting out or something. I'm not saying that's necessarily happening, but you can see it. You have some experiences like this, so we all do. We all sit in front of somebody when you were 8 years old. Remember when you were 8 years old and there was maybe 10 adults in the room, maybe it was at a Thanksgiving or something like that, and you knew that some of the adults were able to relate to you as you were, and the other adults looked at their idea of you. They talked down to you. Sometimes they would talk that artificial language that adults sometimes do with children. Yes.
Since yesterday, I've had a lot of questions come up around some of those topics, and I'm just reminded of what Chazon said. If we're fundamentally not separate, is permission a misunderstanding?
So it can be. It's important to bring as much awareness to each situation as you can, so that as you go along, so there's less possibility that you're going to misinterpret a situation. So I'm not sure which one of the areas you're speaking about. That was our Living Counsel training program you're talking about yesterday. Can you say something specific about it?
It seems like if I were to ask someone permission to do something, it's still kind of loaded a little bit to where the no is more pressure for them to say than the yes. So even if I ask for permission, it's still not fair.
I understand. Yes, sir.
Thoughts on keeping those who disrupt your peace around?
Give me a direct question. I don't do thoughts.
Oh, okay. Should you keep people that disrupt your peace around?
I don't think you should do anything, particularly. But it depends. There's so many dependent. I mean, is this a relative of yours? Is it your spouse? Is it your friend?
In general, public people that disrupt your peace, your relationship with them.
It might be good to take a look at the disruption itself and see if the disruption is actually coming from others rather than something that others are triggering within you that you need to examine. Quite often, the difficulty we have is right here. What's happening out here is just a trigger. I'm not saying somebody can't come up and hit you. Of course they can. But I'm saying quite often That's why in the Buddhist teachings they say, be grateful to everyone. Everyone has been your mother. It's basically saying that we're so interconnected, very relative way of saying we're so interconnected that you can't really find an evil person because it's because of dependent origination. So I would do it with your awareness rather than with some kind of a protocol to get rid of people or to change or to modify yourself. On the other hand, people are getting in your way and disrupting your peace as you meditate, then you probably should lash out at them. You could do it with, you don't have one of those, but you could do it with one of these. Sharpen a sharp point on it. No, don't do that. But you could, you could, as they say, treat others as you would like to be treated. You could turn to them and say, let's just calm down, or let's, I don't want to fight with you. You could work and see if you can't communicate, or you could even, if they're disrupting you, say, you could actually look at what they're saying and put what they're saying into words you think that they might agree with or understand. It looks to me like you're upset with me about this, or something that I'm doing or saying. Is there some way we can work with this and make it so it's workable for both of us? Kind of negotiating.
Agree, disagree. Agree to disagree in a sense.
Yeah, I'd be real careful of any kind of platitudes about things because they tend to replace the actual awareness that needs to be present, and the awareness that needs to be present doesn't know what to do. Thank you for the question.
What is the cage part of the topic, cage of your afflictions?
So the cage is your assumption, just a way of saying it, your assumption that if you have a negative feeling that you need to get rid of it. Or you have a negative feeling, you need to lock it up. You want to go deliberately to that. It's the whole society is doing that. Anything's wrong, lock it up. Separate ourselves. Build a what do they call that? A parapet. You know what I mean? Do that kind of, try to protect, shield. And it's not that there aren't areas where we could do that, but it has to be looked at with our awareness, not thought about a little bit. But once we get into paranoia up here, then that starts to, all the objectivity starts to become, what is the thing that's usually said, weaponized. People are using that these days. I think they're weaponizing marshmallows. That's terrible. Why are you laughing?
I have this image of one of those guns with the
Oh,
marshmallows coming out. Yeah.
I thought spikes coming out of them. Want a marshmallow? No, we won't do that. Further questions? Mm-hmm.
And the verse says, right there within the cage of your afflictions.
Right there, right here, right now. Any negativity you're feeling right now is not separate from Buddha nature. But it's tumbling around. It's masquerading as someone. And so you just need to look at that mask. Look at it. Look at nothing lasts. Use the three marks of existence: impermanence, no self, and suffering. Use the suffering to look at the impermanence and see the mask, and see that it is a mask. It's something that when you look at it completely, it's just, as Trungpa Rinpoche used to say, it's just something with holes in it. You have to actually look at it so much that it, just a way of saying it, it depersonalizes. And it's interesting when something depersonalizes, either whether it's you or anything else, everything becomes extremely clear. Its individuality becomes extremely clear. All the colors are sharply red and blue and pink and orange, and the relative truth is so incredibly intense because it is not separate from Dharmadhatu, in Praise of Dharmadhatu, which is the realm of truth.
Does depersonalization feel like not taking things personally?
Oh, it feels like about going right into the area where you take it really personally and don't move away from it. Don't try to stop it. Do not lecture yourself. I shouldn't take that personally. That's circular. because you can't turn it off. You cannot control it. There's an assumption that if you can just convince yourself of things, then somehow you have some kind of control. You do not have control. There isn't anyone. There is control, but there's no one to do that. And so there's some kind of imputation that manifests, temporarily comes together as a me feeling that is having success with controlling or shutting down, or is losing, or is a fool. So when I say, I refer to myself as a fool, I'm just saying that I'm not sitting here feeling like I'm a fool, but in another kind of way, I had to go through some kind of situation where the self-importance became ridiculous. I'm so important that someone shouldn't, that I'm going to somehow get up here and make a fool of myself. Well, I'm already a fool. I mean, I'm already open to that possibility because it happens all the time. Happened yesterday in our class.
Could you read the second verse again?
Yes, I can. Thank you. Number 89, out of 101. Samsara's tendencies are ponderable. Ponderable. Freedom from tendencies is not. You are completely inconceivable. Who could ever have the power to know you? It's just a negative way of trying to point to something that who you are is, you can't look at that, you can't find that. But you can see,
Does that mean we don't have the power to know ourselves?
Probably. There isn't anyone. So when we say even what Socrates said, know thyself. So if you, in this tradition, if you know what this is, and you know that it is empty of a self, it's empty of any separate being. But then the ultimate situation is not empty of what it is, which is, in this tradition, we would call Buddha nature, or third turning teachings of. It's some schools of Buddhism would accuse the Yogacharans of going back into some kind of theism or something, because they're of the idea that there is some kind of transcendent reality. Joseph.
What does it mean by tendencies? The first.
In this one? So samsara's tendencies of grasping at this or rejecting that or going to war with this or accepting, rejecting, adding, judging, evaluating, praising, even Praise of Dharmadhatu has got its problems. Samsara's tendencies are ponderable. You can see the way you get upset. You can see the way you start to feel like you've lost something. You can see if somebody comes up and doesn't treat you so well or triggers some kind of emotion with you, because they don't pour emotions into you. It's your feeling. This whole feeling matrix is because of the separation of the physical forms and the six sense fields, including the mind. There's a discrete quality. I mean, we're actually here. It's unlikely that if you, although not impossible, that if you commit a crime, that someone else will get arrested. Although if that occurred, then we jump right on that and think something is wrong. And there is something wrong, but it's much deeper than just that incorrect activity. So it says, freedom from tendencies. Samsara's tendencies to grasp, reject, or shut down are ponderable. You can contemplate that. And freedom from the tendency to do that is not something you can ponder. So you can't ponder enlightenment, or you can't ponder no self, no other. You can't ponder realization that nothing is separate from anything else. I want a question from you next. I get to pick on her. She's a monk. Further on that? Okay, go ahead.
I don't have one yet. What should I ask?
That's a pretty good question. That was quick. Ask a really good question about the fundamental nature of whatever this is.
Who is it that sees the mask?
Pardon me?
Who is it that sees the mask?
The mask sees it. Not separate. Everything sees it. There isn't anything that doesn't see it, if it's seen.
Is that why we look at the wall, to ponder those samsaric tendencies?
Yes, exactly. We sit down, we don't sit down and look at the wall to feel better, although some people have a misunderstanding of mindfulness practice. It's about soothing and peace, bringing peace and tranquility. And I'm not saying that's not a kind of a side effect of it, but it's not going to deal with fundamental karma that is buried deep in your bones. That's going to take some work, more than likely. It's not that you couldn't meditate and feel, oh, this is, I used to be worried, but whew, this is great. Finally I meditate, an hour every day, and I feel really good, feel much better. If you feel really good when you meditate, then come and see me. Or continue to do that. That's not wrong. I'm not saying everybody should be in here listening to this old man. But the people who are here, I'm going to talk to you. Go ahead. You have a question? Did you raise her hand? Okay. Says I get confused. Go ahead.
From Magpie, she has a multifaceted question.
Sounds like a magpie.
There's several questions. She says, weaponized food.
Yes.
How are we able to tell the difference between our own feelings that arise and feelings or emotions of others? And should we just observe no matter what or where those emotions come from? In what way are we able to do so?
They're always yours. Always your feelings. What was the next part of the question?
Should we just observe no matter what or where those emotions come from? In what way are we able to do so?
You're probably not able to do so unless you've practiced and trained your mind to hold still and do it on the 8th grade science table. You need to sit down and hold still and practice seeing clearly. Practice watching the thoughts and emotions arise and seeing them, and practice not particularly adding. You're probably going to have to practice by seeing you have a knee-jerk or impulsive way of adding on to everything that happens in the mind stream. But so you practice. Those of you in this room who have spent years and years practicing, especially the ones who have practiced for many, many hours a day, have an idea about that. But it takes time. I practiced easily 30 plus years before I was able to even presume to sit in front of people and talk about this. So, as far as Magpie, sit, meditate, come here and sit. This building is totally dedicated to people coming in, sitting down, holding still, and finding out who they are. That's a slow process. It takes a long time. I'm not saying there aren't people who, because of their karma, causes and conditions, couldn't awaken without meditation. That does happen, but when people do crack through that, and usually it's quite difficult for them because they have no basis for understanding what this is, and it can be frightening to have ego and no ego at the same time. If you Ramana Maharshi, when he was 18 or so, went into retreat for 20 years after his realization on the living room of his parents' house, I think it was. And the wild and crazy teacher, Yuji Krishnamurti, he refers to his awakening as not as the bright spot in my life, but as the calamity, because he was like the whole world as he knew it just completely cracked and came apart. And he's quite grouchy. He's passed away now, but if you saw a video of him, he's a very cranky guy. But people love to go and ask him questions and watch him get upset with them. Same thing with Nisargadatta Maharaj, also someone who teaches by throwing fits. Or, not always, but sometimes. So you can't really teach if you've bought into some kind of God realm idea about your realization, and suddenly you're beyond passion, aggression, and ignorance. You aren't beyond it. It's just no longer a cage. Why is it no longer a cage? There isn't anyone. So it's still there, it's still operating. At some time you may feel caged, sometime you may not feel caged. It comes and goes, and you don't mind. Go ahead.
And the verse says something about you can't contemplate being outside of the cage.
Mm-hmm.
So how can you see that?
You can't. You just said. Don't you believe, Nagarjuna? It's just a way of talking about it because people tend to want to look for that. We can see the difficulty, we can see the passion, aggression, ignorance, and so on. We can see that, we can contemplate that, we can look at that. But then if that stops being a cage, if the cage just stops trapping anything, no, we're not saying the passion, aggression, and ignorance might not still be there in some way, but there's no individual that is trapped. Or Michael. Other Michael.
Is it this desire to find relief from our pain that he's talking about in that verse?
Probably. It's a desire to find relief. We're all kind of trying to find some relief somehow. And the way of work, go ahead.
How do you go beyond that desire?
Look at it. See if there's anyone who desires anything. It's the identity that is second. The identity, you have the desire, and then the identity seconds the motion by saying, yeah, that's the way I feel. Well, the way I feel about that is, it's like when somebody like Adrian asked me, what are your thoughts? It's not that I don't think, but I can't function like that because everything just, there's nothing there when he says that. What are your thoughts? Yes.
For that example, how do we turn from the desire to the one that's having it?
You don't need to. There isn't anyone. All you have to do is look at the desire. And the imputation of something will start to show through, bleed through. It'll become transparent. The very thought starts, the very emotion situation starts to become. It's just a metaphor. It might not become transparent. It might turn into jelly beans. But it does something that where it starts to lose its credibility. Sometimes, what is the fancy way of saying ontological status? It no longer has it has some kind of believability as something. That's why it's called a spiritual path. We're going to transcend everything that's here, everything that's not here. Plus and minus, transcend. And if there were a better word, then we'd use it. We could call it, I don't know, give me a synonym for transcend.
Rebirth.
No.
Rainbows and unicorns.
$3?
Rainbows and unicorns.
Rainbows and unicorns. There was another question, Michael.
If there's no one behind the desire, then what fuels the desire?
It's just the nature of dependent. It's just a dependent origination that is showing up as the thought patterns, the ideas, the particular functioning as a biological organism. In this space. Just because there's so many things going on, that one aspect of the consciousness seems to contract into somebody. And it may have, and this is just speculation, and I'm not really too much interested in that, may have to do with if there's a physical form and there are other physical forms trying to eat that physical form, then it might come out of trying to protect the consciousness, the container of the consciousness. So like a frog running from a snake. And so the frog doesn't turn around and say, let's be friends. And the snake says, I'm kind of hungry. So there's no, that's going right to the actual issue. There isn't anyone. If I'm sitting here and I hear this voice happening from here, but if I look back, I don't see anything. I don't see a person. This doesn't mean I don't have emotions or feelings or hopes and fears or anything kind of thing might come and go. They don't have much longevity, but they do come and go, and they come sometimes intensely. Yes?
When you say that if you look back, you don't see anybody, what does it mean to even look back in that way?
Well, say the personal pronoun I, and then where does that come from? But now say me.
Me.
Where does that come from? Why do you use it? Don't you have, okay, close your eyes. Okay, I'm gonna count to 3. Everybody leave the room. I'll count to 3, and I'm gonna say now, I'm gonna count to 3, and then when I do that, when I hit 3, you're gonna actually see the me or the I, but you can't laugh. 1, 2, 2.5, sorry, 3. What do you see?
I can't listen to what you're saying.
I rest my case. No self. No self. There is no self. Doesn't mean that some part of you is going to disappear. It might become even stronger. It's just that it's not at war with anything anymore. You know, if you make friends with this, or I should say this, you can't have enemies because you're fundamentally the very torture we do deep inside is about the separation we feel on the outside. So make friends here. The outside warfare. I'm not saying you're not going to, flip somebody off or something. It might happen. Unlikely, because you're going to see more clearly the causes and conditions that are arising as anybody's given situation that you happen to be a little grain of sand. You're just a part of the whole thing. Your physical form, your spiritual form, your psychological form. Michael?
Are these desires or these adding, are they really just habits?
Quite a bit of that. It's even called the vasanas that come out of the storage consciousness, the alaya vijnana, are called habit energy. They're just habitual patterns. The alaya vijnana is not a place, it's not a thing. It's a way we talk about what the consciousness does when it seems to hang on to stuff or store stuff. And it is said, and I can't particularly say this is true or not, but it is said that if one is realized, then that whole area just disappears. There is no more storehouse of anything. Otherwise known as, what's that other word for it?
Freedom.
Oh, it's another one. Bad memory. Yes. You just rub your nose. Oh, put your glasses up. Okay.
Yesterday you said something along the lines of how you're permanently haunted.
Yeah.
So if the alaya sort of just defabricates or disappears, what is that haunting?
It's unreal. So it may continue, it may not. You're not concerned. You're not really concerned about, it's not that you're not, if you have a negative feeling or a positive feeling or what, it's not that doesn't show up and you don't have that emotion or that feeling. It's just that you're not concerned about something else, about wanting more of something or wanting less of something or wanting control of something. It's just, there's all the reference points for that are the old-fashioned things that happened when you were self-centered are don't particularly carry any weight. And that can function in such a way that your emotions are even more powerful, because before then you were kind of holding them down out of fear. But now you're not particularly afraid because you realize nothing is threatened. So you're willing to feel. You're willing to feel what this is. You're willing to have thoughts, no matter what they are. They might be paranoid thoughts. It might be useless chatter about it, almost anything. More. Andrew.
Why is seeing that someone is triggering emotion and that it's our own negativity fishy?
Again, please.
Yesterday I was describing some difficulty to you, and you asked if I saw someone triggering me or if it was my own negativity that I saw. I said both, and you seemed to indicate that was fishy. I'm wondering why that is.
I don't know. I said it was fishy?
You sniffed the air.
I go, like that? Yeah.
It was more like a cat than a fish.
It's a cat smelling a fish. So, I'm trying to go back into the dynamic that was there, and that's not showing up, so it must be something else was happening there. Maybe it was the content of what was happening, that particular situation, rather than one of those two things is always going to be fishy. So I'm saying that those could come up together, apart. They might be together. Might be have 75% of this one time, and another time it's 150% or some of those. But something about that specific situation, I think it might have had something to do with the content of it, the people involved. It could have been that. That might have been where I was. It's difficult for me to go back into some other thing. But you could ask something similar, or ask the same question, if you wish.
Can we acknowledge both that the relative situation is someone triggering us, but that it's our emotions being
Yes.
triggered?
Okay. Yes, that's not fishy. It can be both and neither, and it can be, you can acknowledge it, and as soon as you acknowledge it, you'll show up the way more. If you don't fight with anything and you just receive it, then it starts to show up more, perhaps the way the relative structure actually is, because you don't have anything particularly invested in it. So you're actually willing to experience your own craziness or your own kind of grasping at some kind of wanting to be right, or wanting to justify an emotion because somebody did something. So I wouldn't have felt that if somebody hadn't have done something. That's the area where it gets kind of corny, screwy, or whatever you want to say. And that comes from don't necessarily go to war with any of those things. Those things are just relative truths showing up in a personalized way. If you want to work on it, the way to work on it is find out who's experiencing it. Find out if there's a being that is having that feeling. Find out if there's an Andrew, a fundamental Andrew that can ever be harmed by anything. I'm not saying your body isn't going to go down. Of course it is. But who you fundamentally are is not separate from the body, and is also not identical with the body. More? One final question. Michael?
I don't know what triggered this, but what you just said, is that how those monks during Vietnam could go into a square and light themselves afire?
Oh, I don't have any idea. No. Just extreme suffering. It's hard to say. We could do a lot of imputation there about this and that, and that must have thought this and that, but it's so tangled up in the causes and conditions for those individual monks that did that. I mean, we imagine that they're doing it out of protest of the Vietnam War or something like that, but it's really hard to say what was really going on there. I mean, really fundamentally. It just was a terrible sight. I remember seeing that in late 60s, I think it was, 1868. Not good. Very good. Thank you so much.
We'll stand and dedicate the merit in the back of our yellow chant books. I'd like to remind everybody about the donation boxes in the hallway. As always, we depend and appreciate your financial help. Also like to remind everybody this coming Saturday is our all day, and please join us if you can.
May the merit penetrate into all places, so that we and every sentient being together can realize the Buddha's way. The three worlds, all Buddhas, all venerable ones, Bodhisattvas, Mahasattvas, the great Prajna Paramita. temple, monastery, our Sangha, families, friends, and visitors. Heal everyone who is unhappy, sick, or suffering, and fill them with light.